mean women and their families have less money to support themselves, save and invest for the future, and be a productive part of a citizenry, and are able to take care of their families. If the annual gender wage gap were eliminated, on average, a working woman in the United States would have enough money approximately for, listen to this, 15 more months of child care, 1.2 additional years of tuition and fees for 4-year public university, or the full cost of tuition and fees for a 2-year community college, 78 more weeks of food for the family, and 7 months of mortgage and utilities payments, and I can go on and on. But I won't, because we'll have a conversation here. I'm looking forward to being part of this conversation. And I thank you all for coming. I also want to make sure I acknowledge that our mayor, Frank Moran, is here with us as well as
So that's why we're so proud to have the best chancellor, not only in the state of New Jersey, but I think the entire country. Phoebe, thank you for what you do each and every day, and thank Rutgers for being that point that has been, if we go back 20 years, it used to be the island. Now it is the flag point of so much we do here in New Jersey and in Camden City, and certainly our mayor, Frank Moran, understands that it's now in place for convening, for having conversations that are much broader than what was looked at before. So thank you for coming. I got in late last night. I had the honor for the second time of crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge with John Lewis yesterday. And just a wonderful human being. And we were at Birmingham, Montgomery, Selma, and in Memphis. In less than a month from now will be the 50th anniversary of Dr. King's assassination. 50 years. 50 years. It was a remarkable time, and just a reflection on who we are as a country, who we are as a people. So how fitting that we're here this morning to talk about women's issues in particular. A little less than a month ago, I had the honor of being on the National Mall, quite frankly the same place that Dr. King was some 50 years earlier, but focusing on issues surrounding women. And I had just a few moments to say something. And what immediately came to mind was my mother. And that's what I said, Mom, you're always with me. I had a strong mother, raised 4 boys, which is no easy task. Irish triplets, and then my younger brother, who had such vision and insight. Everybody thought it was my dad who was a strong one. It was my mother. It had been several generations in my family that no girls were born, other than marrying into the family. We didn't have a sister or a cousin that we talked about. So it was different when you grow up with 4 boys, but Mom instilled those values. In fact, we had 4 boys that gone to a small Lutheran religious school, and Mom was in PTA, did everything. And our pastor, at a moment that my mother liked to share, says, you know, we appreciate what you do, but a woman's place is in the home. You do not say that to my mother. The next year, we were all out of that school. We understood the strength of that. You know, balancing the issues of life, right? If you want to pursue a career, whatever you want to do in your life, comes from a perspective, who is around you, who has helped driving that. So I'm here today not only to share my greetings and thank you, is to have a conversation. And we could not ask for a better panel, because diversity is our strength, and certainly in our panel, 3 very different people, but all very successful where they came from. To talk about, as we heard, Chancellor, the issues around wages. Here we are, yes, it's 2018, and the discrepancy between men and women. But one of the biggest challenges is how do you prove that? And those discussions we have the Lilly Ledbetter Act and issues of that. We know what happens, but how do we point the finger? Making sure that the wages are there. And as I look out there for Isabella and Daddy Mark, you know, balancing childcare. I was a single dad in the construction industry as an apprentice. I can tell you in 1980, it was not the easiest thing to go out and find a reliable, affordable, quality daycare that opened up at 6 in the morning for the construction industry. But the remarkable thing, I don't think it's all that much different here today, but the cost has certainly increased. So childcare, and what does it mean to have sick leave? Well, when you're sick, we understand that, but when your child is sick, well, you have to make the choice whether to take care of your child or afford to take care of the child by going to work. So those are the sort of policies that we're going to have the discussion on today. And as I mentioned earlier, we have 3 wonderful panelists. You heard from the chancellor. Mom was a teacher, dad was a dentist, but has her professional career always been fighting and writing about the discrepancies, the differences, the gender biases, and we thank you for what you do. Look forward to hearing from you. And Gabby, who was my assembly colleague for 4 days. We don't have to hear, all we have to do is watch on how you balance your life. But you've been blessed with a absolutely gorgeous child that reminds us so much of why we're here. It's for that next generation. And how you balance this, how you make it all work. Is it holding you back? So, Gabby, thank you for what you do day in, day out, not only as a person, not only as a mother, but as a legislator. So finally, and as I mentioned to our First Lady, she will probably be the only one ever introduced in the next 3.5 years, because I don't think our president's going to ask me to introduce his wife. Immigration. How do you have this how do you have this conversation? Do that to the poor dreamers, and his wife is an immigrant. He's only 3rd generation. Wow. As I walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge 3 years ago, which was the 50th anniversary when John Lewis' head was bashed in by a baton by the Alabama State Troopers, yet he and President Obama walked that same bridge together. And how far we've come as a country, but how far we have to go. That day it was about civil rights, it was quite frankly about voting rights. And here we are today still having that conversation, gerrymandering, suppression of votes. Because that is the ultimate tool, your voice, your vote. And that drives many of the policies that we're going to talk about today. And we're blessed to have I got a soft spot for babies, which is absolutely wonderful. But Tammy has served on so many boards, and by expression, what she does day in and day out, what she cares about. Evolved in an industry that, in finance, there weren't too many women involved with that back when you first started. And certainly none of us can forget her story when she was abused during the New Jersey's Women March. Mother of 4 wonderful kids. She's been blessed by both sides of the equation, unlike the 4 boys in my family. But balancing that and now becoming the First Lady of the state of New Jersey. Somebody who I've admired in the short time I've met her and had a conversation with her. Very much looking forward to her perspective. Please welcome our First Lady, Tammy Murphy.
Thank you, Congressman Norcross, for your introduction and friendship, and for holding this important discussion here today. And thank you to Rutgers Camden for hosting us, and especially to Chancellor Hatton. Thank you so much. I have to say, Congressman, that there is no better person to be hosting and leading this event today. If you want to find out about fair treatment for working families, all you need to do is ask a union member. So you are a leader for working families here in New Jersey and in Washington, and we are so lucky to have you fighting for us. I also want to thank Assemblywoman Gabby Mascaro, and glad Mark and Isabella are here today as well, I have to say. We're going to need advocates in the State House who are working for families and for women to stand up against the special interests, and I have no doubt that you will be right there in the heart of that fight. So thank you for being here. And we all need strong leaders because success would be nothing less than life-changing for New Jersey's women. In New Jersey, the median salary for women working full-time is over $50,000. That doesn't sound so bad, right? But it's roughly $11,000 less than the median annual salary for a man. Across all races, as we've heard from both the congressman and also from the chancellor, women working full-time on average earn 82 cents on the dollar for what a white male is doing similar work. But if you're African American, it's 58 cents. And if you're a Latina, it's 43 cents. The economic cost of this disparity, an estimated $32.5 billion a year in lost wages and economic power. This is New Jersey in 2018. Women deserve equal pay for equal work. I've heard the same old question always from a man asking, why do we need a Women's History Month? Well, when we're treated equally as men in the workplace and are paid equally, then maybe we'll do more than just tune out the question, because then you'll know why you're wrong and you've been asking it. But we can't stop just at equal pay. Women also deserve an increase in the minimum wage and the security and peace of mind of earned sick leave. This is how we give women more economic power. These are the values we're fighting for, to lift up every family and give them the chance to enter the middle class or to secure their place in it and enjoy the economic power and freedom that they deserve. Even more, this is the peace of mind is the least we owe our state's women. Thank you for Congressman for welcoming me here today, and I look forward to our panel discussion. Yeah, great.
Now, this is a new one to take your daughter to work. A little bit early. Take your husband to work. Well, first of all, once again, thank you for coming together and having a discussion. I see a lot of familiar faces out there, and that's good. But there's a lot of faces who are not here, and whose discussion I think is so important. Last week in Congress, we had a conversation. I was invited to the Women's Caucus, and they said, oh, half the crowd will be your colleagues. So I go. Me and one other were the only men in the room, which is interesting. And I'd like to chalk it up that we have many things on our fire in Washington, but having that discussion in a room where you're not doing it for political purposes, but for a real discussion, and to hear three of my colleagues who talk about their experiences either growing up or as adults where they were abused, that they were afraid before the most recent conversations on women's issues, Me Too, that they had never had the courage to speak about, and much like you did, Tammy. So what I'd like to start with is just a conversation, the journey that brought you here today. Share with us sort of the lessons to many of those in the audience of what you thought was, at least at the time when you're trying to make a career decision, what you wanted to do with your life, starting as a young woman in school to where you are today. How'd you get here, Tammy?
First of all, thank you for inviting me here, because that's how I literally got here. But I will say, I went to the University of Virginia, and I was an English and communications double major. Why? I did that because I felt like everyone should be able to speak, read, and write by the time they graduate, and I wanted to keep as many doors open as possible for the future, not knowing exactly what I wanted to do. Back in the day, which is foreign for many of the people in this room, but back in the day, businesses used to have boxes that they would leave at the Office of Career Planning and Placement, and you could literally put your resume in, and they would come along and read the resumes and decide who they wanted to see. And so I, being one who is, always trying to look for the next adventure, I dropped my resume in every single box, from, Procter and Gamble to advertising agencies to investment banks. I mean, I really thought I would just use the interview process to try and find out what I should be doing and maybe get a clue for the future. So it turns out that I was offered a couple of jobs in investment banking and finance. And so I thought, well, I know nothing about that field, so I'll do this for a couple of years before I go on and become a journalist or a lawyer or whatever it is I'm supposed to do. And one thing led to another. So I started working, and I was only supposed to be there for 2 years, and about a year and a half into it, they said, would you like to stay? And I thought, wow, I guess I must be contributing in some way. And then so I stayed, and then I was offered a job, and I moved overseas to London, and was still in finance, and it just snowballed. And I would say I ended up in finance more because I developed a skill set, obviously, but it wasn't something I thought I would fall into. I will tell you, I was talking to Stephanie Lagos, my chief of staff, about this, but I was the only female professional in the London office for the company that I worked for, the only one. So every other female in that office was either a secretary on the switchboard or was in some lower level position, obviously all on the same team and obviously working for the benefit of the organization, but it was quite the experience to be the only female.
You mentioned the term switchboard, so that gives me an idea of what decade. For those of you who don't know that, that's how they connected your telephone a few years ago. So we hear about the financial industry, and I look to my right and I look in the back to a gorgeous little baby. Your path took you a little bit differently, didn't it, Gabby, to come here today?
Yes, actually, my journey to the United States, or actually my journey here, started in Ecuador. That's where I was born. I'm an immigrant to this country. So my parents came here seeking a better life, and my mother is who I credit for me actually being in the seat that I am as Assemblywoman. My mom is a very strong woman. My mother is a survivor of domestic violence, and her strength has taught me a lot of perseverance, a lot of just determination and never giving up. That's the lessons that I've learned from my mom. And as a result, she was the one that put in me from an early age, you can hear me, from an early age, how the importance of education. And that's why I have a love of education, and I am the first one in my family, my immediate family, to graduate college, first one in my immediate family to have a postgraduate degree. I have my graduate degree in business administration. And I came to government just for the love of helping others and to be service of others. And that's where I stayed. I found my voice in government, wanting to help people and be of service to people.
And we'll get back to it a little bit, but we want to have that discussion considering what today originally was, which was the deadline imposed by the President of DACA, and having been a 3-year-old coming here, what your life was growing up with a very different perspective. We're going to touch base on that. But Chancellor, wow, first time ever in Rutgers history down here to have a woman as chancellor. So that's exciting, but isn't it sad it took that long? That wasn't a hard discussion. So, Tell us about your story. How did you end up here on stage, other than, yes, I did invite you?
My pathway is somewhat different than many other people in this room, perhaps, because I came from the South. I migrated from the South with my family when I was about 5 years old. And I actually lived in New Jersey when I first came. The reason we migrated, like many other African American families, was that my father was a dentist and my mother was a hidden figure. Many of you in the audience have probably seen the movie. My mother was one of the computers that are focus of the Hidden Figures movie, but more importantly, part of the Hidden Figures book, which is a really well-documented report of that. Well, the challenge was finding good work and good educational opportunities for my family, and so that's what drove us to come to New Jersey. My father was in practice, dental practice in North Jersey, and my mother became a science teacher because that was the general route for a mom who was still interested in working, but also had a family to.
But in science, so back
In
then it was
science
a little
and then
bit.
in math. Yeah, so she taught math and science through the 10 or 20 years that she was doing teaching, and then she became a guidance counselor. I think she became a guidance counselor because she wanted to show students in Passaic that they too could have jobs and pathways like she had, and like she knew that she would make possible for my brother and I. So I have a connection with you. My brother is an investment banker, has been for 30 years, but also I'm a lawyer as well as an educator, and that was part of my family for the last 5 generations. So it's something that I'm very proud of, but also it tells me that we all could have the ability to do things if we have the pathways that enable us to do that.
So, when you were growing up, strong parents, a mother who not only talked about it, but showed you the way, how did you decide on this pathway versus a multitude of things that you could have done?
I loved the law, but I never practiced law. I loved being in education very early. I went to the law school community right after I graduated from law school, after a couple of years of clerkship. And as soon as I really became invested in being a law professor, it really became attractive to me to be a president of a university. I really thought that this was something that I could do that kind of set myself apart, but also combine the skills that I had as an educator as well as a lawyer. And so that's what I set out to do. And I applied many, many times before actually coming here. I was dean of the law school at Maryland because each time I got to the very last point where it was between 2 of us, they would say, well, you don't have any administrative experience.
Is that code
Ceiling,
speech?
that's called the ceiling.
Wow. Because to have that sort of vision in an area that is not predominantly women by any stretch of imagination,
Right.
and we've been blessed to have you here,
Thank you.
Gabby, when we hear so much about working women's issues, you know, it's almost interchangeable, or should be, quite frankly, with family issues. And when you speak the term women's issue, particularly in Washington, the first thing that comes to mind is what women are allowed to do with their bodies, in particular the abortion issue. But it's much bigger than that, right? As your husband walks up with your baby, it's family issues that really balancing life. Share with us a little bit how you do that.
Through the grace of God, first of all. I'm very fortunate to have a good network of support, and that I think that's very important, to have that support so I'm allowed to do what I can do. I have my husband here, who is very supportive. I have in-laws that are extremely supportive, my family. It's all about having that support network, and people pitching in, and which is very helpful to me, because then I can be of service to others. And I know that I have, in the audience, I know I have a bunch of babysitters, so thank you very much.
I just volunteered also.
Yes. I think the most important thing is family and friends and that support, which allows a woman to do what they can do. The sad part is that not many women in this state have that support. And that is why I do what I do in the State House and as being a legislator, is making sure that there are women throughout the state have those supports so they can be successful in their careers, so they can, achieve their own American dream. Everyone has a right to that opportunity. And as a legislator, I think it's my job to make sure that we help each other to ensure the success of women and families in the state.
So you have 2 full-time jobs and many part-time jobs. You're a mother, you have your regular job, you have your legislative job. You are one of the few women who have served in our legislature to have a baby while serving.
Yes.
Teresa Ruiz comes to mind. That's not exactly normal. In the first part of New Jersey history, we had no mothers who had babies. How are you being accepted in that environment? What challenges do you find? Do we have daycare up at the State House?
No, we don't have daycare at the State House.
Are we going to have daycare at the State House?
I have to talk to someone about that. I find it, I think it's fun. I make it, somehow, I make it work. That's what we do as women. We just make it work. We don't think about the problem. We're just, okay, there's an issue. Okay, let's make it work. That's just how we're built, I guess, as women. We just, they give us lemons, and we find a way to make lemonades without the tools.
Being a mother, has it changed your views on anything yet?
Yes, actually it has. I'm noticing things that I haven't noticed before. And actually, I was telling Stephanie, Chief of Staff, that I've never noticed that there's bathrooms, some female bathrooms don't have a changing table. And I have found myself actually changing diapers on the floor.
Wow.
And it's just interesting. I've never noticed that before. I never paid attention. But now being a mom, being a new mom, I've been paying close attention to, oh, does this bathroom have a changing table? If it doesn't have a changing table, what do I do? Okay, let's figure this out. So it's the little things that you don't think about before that you start thinking about now.
Wow. So each of you are mothers, and you turn on the TV a few weeks ago, and you see the shooting at Parkland. So in Camden City in 1949, we had a shooting here by UNRWA, killed 13 people, and there was a mother who hid her child in a closet who survived. The mother and father were killed, and his grandchild was at Parkland, hiding in a closet. When you turn on TV, your baby's a little bit young to go to school yet, but others, how does that impact the way that you view public safety? Because as I said to you, how has being a mother changed it? Tammy?
When the news of Parkland, Florida hit the media, it was, I was shocked, I was upset, I was angry. But then I got into this legislative mode where, okay, where are the problems, where's the miscommunications, what do we need to do to ensure that this does not happen again? And where were the missteps? Where were, what didn't we see? And luckily, we live in a state that I think it's very proactive in certain areas, and specifically with school safety. And I know that I'm very proud to say that in my hometown in Gloucester Township, we're extremely proactive with that. Making sure that the police department is within the community, having constant communications with the school districts, talking to each other, having elected officials like local officials, the mayors talking to the police department talking to the superintendents, you know, it's having that open communication, knowing what is going on in our school safety. There's a lot of things that went wrong in Parkland, but I think this is an opportunity to make it right, and we have this great chance to do the right thing, and I think that we should capitalize on it and learn the lessons from Parkland and make sure that does not happen again.
So, Tammy, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple things here. First of all, I am the outlier. When our children were growing up, you know, I'm sure as a parent you'll know this down the road, when you're going over to a friend's house, you're gonna say, you know, who's gonna be watching over them, you know, what are they gonna be doing? I used to ask every single person, do you have guns in your house? And I had a little grid and I kept it, and my kid used to drive my kids crazy. But one person actually one time said, yes, we have guns in our house, please come over, I'll show you how they're kept. And I won't go into the details, but the way they were kept and the whole idea behind it didn't really sit well with me. And so that was the last time that my child went over to that house, and it caused a little bit of friction for us in social circles. But I will tell you that it's astounding to me that our population in America is asking our government to pass gun legislation. Everyone wants gun legislation. Sure, there are some people who are going to talk about the right to bear arms, and I don't think anyone's trying to deny that right. But there is really no reason to have assault rifles. There is just, it just makes no sense. I'm really proud of my husband, and I'm really happy in the way that he has worked to bring a coalition of different states together to share knowledge, to work together and make sure that if someone tries to get a gun in one state and they're denied, that information is sent over to the other state so the other state knows why they were denied. To try and actually pull together and have universities who will actually keep data on what's going on in gun control in the different states. So I think that we all have to band together, and if the federal government needs to do more, there is just no question. But in the interim, New Jersey, which, as Gabby said, we have great gun legislation here, but I really hope that we can be one of, if not the leaders, in terms of setting an example as to how you can both live with the right to bear arms on the one hand, but live and not have fear on the other. So I would just say that.
By the way, we're very proud of your husband too. I think he's doing a good job. But, you know, it's important because government has its role and its obligations to keep the people safe, but you as a mother and the